Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. I really appreciate you all for joining from all around the world. I can see your comments from different parts of the world. And to begin this live streaming with a very short comment or very short answer to one of the commentators who asked, heard from sources that the Syrian and Russian troops have been engaging in operations in Syria's deserts against IS. Is there new aggressions happening as a result of the US's involvement in Syria? So to answer to this question, today the Russian and the Syrian Air Force, they conducted joint operation against the ISIS hordes coming from the direction of Al Tanaf border crossing or Al Tanaf base of the United States. As I told you multiple times, guys, the ISIS cells are active on the periphery of the American occupation post in Al Tanf area, and from there they advance and they wage attacks against the Syrian army positions. And today the Russian and the Syrian armies, they conducted joint operation against the ISIS hordes trying to attack against Syrian army positions, and they successfully contained the attack. Thankfully, according to my sources, up until this moment, I haven't heard of any casualties among the Syrian army soldiers. Now, in the past live streaming, after I posted it on YouTube, I received a comment from someone. His name is Andrew Ackerley or something. He says, the article Kevork quoted to be from Newsweek in this video was totally fabricated Russian disinformation. Newsweek didn't publish what he read out to you all on this video. Kevork is a Syrian refugee now living in Berlin and came from civil war-torn Aleppo. He has links to the Russian Orthodox Church. He's acting here on the social media as a Russian proxy and a spreader of anti-Western fakes and lies. I laughed when I read this comment because first things first, the article that I screened to you guys, the title goes, "The Ukrainian Boondoggle Must End." It's an opinion article published on the Newsweek, and I screened to you that article and I summarized it, and it's still there. And I answered to him and I said, "Here is the link of the article. What do you say about that?" Look, I've been involved in this reporting, commenting on the political affairs in English language since 2017, since I created this YouTube channel. And I don't know if it's a fortunate thing or an unfortunate thing, but because of your work, many people start recognizing you. And because of if your work is a little bit influential or it's impactful, they start either praising you or attacking you. There is not like something in the middle. So some people say, this guy says I have links to the Russian Orthodox Church. I mean, last time I've been in a church was when when my uncle died in 2020. I'm not like disowning my religion, but I'm not like going to church all the time. This is a separate issue, but people think because of the fact that the mainstream media, the corporate media, the legacy media is funded by governments or non-governmental entities or by corporations or by billionaires, that everyone will be like these prostitutes, right? Unfortunately, lots of people do not comprehend the fact that they are people with dignity and they have an honor and they would not sell themselves for money. And if I wanted to sell myself and make money, guys, in 2011, I would have sold myself to Qatar or to the United States or to the UK or to Saudi Arabia or to any of these governments who wanted to topple the Syrian government. And they poured in the country millions and millions of dollars to finance journalists like myself or activists in order to amplify the anti-Assad voices. And I personally received an offer from a Syrian opposition figure, and I am paraphrasing him, and he told me in the text, he said, I still remember that, he said, "Kevork, you are too clever to be on the sinking ship or the sinking boat side." He said, "The Assad Sheep or the boat is sinking, and you're too smart to be on his side." And I said, "I'm not on the side of Assad, I'm on the side of Syria." And I truly believe that the camp that wanted to overthrow Assad and replace him they wanted to just bring a puppet to Syria. Someone like Zelensky, someone like Saakashvili, someone like Pashinyan in Armenia, someone who is a puppet. They can move him with their fingers, and I refuse to do that. So today in 2024, I can sleep with I have a great comfort in my chest when I sleep, and when I look to myself in the mirror, I feel proud and I feel like I did the right thing. I don't feel at all that I was on the wrong side, and I will continue that way. I will always have my cooperation with different media outlets, but I will never sell myself for money. Of course, if there is something like they ask me to write an opinion article, for example, CGTN, it's a Chinese outlet. They asked me to write an article about certain topic. So this is my opinion, publishing in their outlet, receiving money in return if I publish something, right? And they don't pay me and say, please write in this way. No, they send me, for example, the title. If you can, please write us an article about this. I say, yeah, okay, why not? So this is just wanted you to know, guys. And every time I post my live streamings since 4 months, in every live streaming, the moment I end the live streaming, the video goes demonetized. And they suppress it, the content, until they take a look manually if the content suits the monetization policies of YouTube. And until they come to a decision, it takes days, of course. So the content remains suppressed for a few days. And worse still, 50% of the times that I apply for them to check why is the video is demonetized and suppressed, they keep the demonetization. So it's something that bothers you because you work for hours per day to present the content like this, and then you get nothing in return, right? It's a job at the end of the day, guys, and everybody has to make a living. Yesterday, I was checking the statistics of Syriana Analysis. In the past 3 months, we have around 500,000 views. It's not bad, but we can do way better, in my opinion. And I just checked the geography of the followers or the viewers of Syriana Analysis. In the first place comes the United States, 27%. The second place is the United Kingdom, 10.8%. The third place is Canada, 8.3%. And the fifth place, Australia, 6.2%. And then Germany, South Africa, Netherlands, Sweden, France, Brazil, India, Ireland, Malaysia. You can see the list and goes and goes and goes on. Most of them are from Western countries. So the narrative that I am anti-West is completely BS, because there are so many people like myself living in the Western communities and the Western societies agree with what I say, because I'm not spewing hate against the West or Western civilization, but rather I'm criticizing policies and foreign policies of governments, politicians, establishments, corporations, when these policies harm the people in my country or in other regions, right? I'm an advocate for peace, and I'm an advocate for cooperation, coordination between different countries, between Syria and the West, between Syria and the East. I do not exclude anyone. My wife is German. She's from the West. So that's so go figure. How can I be hating West, Westerners in any way? So I also checked the age of the people watching Syriana Analysis, and it was really fascinating, because I thought that most of the viewers of Syriana Analysis are from the younger generation, or the younger than me, or in my age, and the people between the 18 years old and 24 years old are only 3.7%. And the people between 25 and 34 years old are only 12%. The majority of the people watching my channel are above 45 years old, guys. And this gives me more confidence that what I'm presenting is qualitative, and more people are from an older generation find a person who is younger than them, telling them information or analysis that they find is beneficial. Now, because I promised you guys that in the live streamings, I'm going to show you a short analysis, and I made a short video for you. I'm going to post this video edited with the background music and the graphics, etc., at 8 p.m. Central European Time on X, but you're going to watch it raw now on YouTube. Take a look. In previous videos, I spoke about American imperialism and neocolonialism, and I received questions like, but Kevork, what could have the United States done but strike these targets in Syria and Iraq? See, there are different types of colonization, one of which is here. Some brains are colonized, and they cannot fathom the fact that there are root causes for this problem. For example, in 2003, the US illegally invaded Iraq, occupied it, and now in 2024, the Iraqi government is telling the American troops to leave the country, but still American troops are stationed there. In Syria, in 2011, the US waged a regime change war against the country, just like they did with Libya, and removed and murdered Gaddafi. And in 2017, they sent occupation troops to Syria, to my country, against the will of the Syrian people and against the will of the Syrian government. And now in 2024, the Syrian government is telling the Americans to leave the country. And they're asking them, what are you doing here? You're stationed on the borders between Syria, Iraq, and Jordan in Al-Tanf border crossing, where the American troops came under attack to block my trade route with the regional countries and isolate me with the regional countries. And two, you were stationed near the oil fields, of course, to steal the oil, to keep the oil. I mean, the Americans do not need the oil, right? But they keep the oil so that the Syrian government cannot use the oil to generate revenues, to reconstruct the country, to generate electricity, to restart reconstruction, to heal, to recover. In other words, the main reason is sadism. They are impoverishing the Syrian people and disallowing them to reconstruct their country. Even American experts specialized on Syria, such as Joshua Landes, he posted a brilliant article, and he says that the US troops must have left Syria and Iraq long ago, as the governments and the people are determined to drive them out. Therefore, stationing or deploying troops in a region increasingly hostile to their presence makes no sense. So to answer to the question, what could the United States have done? The simple answer is leave. Leave, allow the people to reconstruct their countries, to heal, to recover, to restart doing business with the regional countries, with the international countries, and then you seek friendly relationship with them, right? And instead of waging endless wars against them for the sake of the military-industrial complex, you need to pursue the national interests of your own people, and also at least not to ruin the lives of millions of people in the region, right? In other words, act normal and don't be a bully, because the rest of the world is taking notes. In fact, the rest of the world is taking notes, and unfortunately, the US establishment and the people in charge of the foreign policy in the United States are not acting normal, and they're not putting their country on the right track. And you can see that the US escalation against Iran in the region threatens all-out war in the Middle East. This article was published today by Andre Damon. And he says the United States' endless war in the Middle East, which has killed millions of people and destroyed entire societies over the course of the past 3 decades, is entering a new and more deadly stage. US officials have made it clear that a central target of the US military offensive is actually Iran. Jake Sullivan was asked directly if the United States would rule out strikes inside Iran. Sullivan declared he would not do so, stating, "I'm not going to get into what's on the table and what on the table and off the table when it comes to the American response." This is what Jake Sullivan said exactly in this regard, guys.
Have you ruled out strikes inside Iran?
Well, sitting here today on a national news program, I'm not going to get into what we've ruled in and ruled out from the point of view of military action. What I will say is that the president is determined to respond forcefully to attacks on our people. the president also is not looking for a wider war in the Middle East.
But is it off the table? Are strikes inside Iran off the table?
Again, Kristen, sitting here on television, it would not be wise for me to talk about what we're ruling in and ruling out.
So you're not ruling it out?
I'll just say the same thing one more time, which is I'm not going to get into what's on the table and off the table when it comes to the American response.
Have you ruled?
So he will not rule out, right? He cannot say that. Do I believe that the US will strike Iran? No, I do not think so. And I mentioned that multiple times, guys. The repercussions of attacking Iran is bigger than the people can expect in the United States. Maybe the arrogant people, the people who think that they are just like a Rambo who can come and bomb everywhere around the world and everybody will submit to them, maybe they think that's a good idea. Maybe the neocons have lost their mind. Maybe the Zionists are lobbying in Washington, D.C. to strike Iran. I'm saying maybe, but the military people in the Pentagon, right? They know that the moment a missile or a rocket falls on the Iranian territory, their interests in the region, their assets in the region, their military bases in the region, the 50,000 troops in the region, their cargo ships in the region, the flow of the fuel from the region to the rest of the world, everything will be in jeopardy. And the Iranians have spent, since I opened my eyes to politics, I can see that Iran is just developing weapons after weapons after weapons and technologies after technologies to the extent that the Iranians are now exporting their weapons to Russia. The Russians in the Ukraine war, they realized that they have this weakness and that they needed drones, right? Kamikaze drones. And it was even strange for me to know that the Russians didn't have that type of weapons. And the Iranians are supplying them with hundreds, right? And they prove to be efficient in the battlefield. The Iranians, for example, when they developed something in 2024, what they had 10 years ago, let's say in 2014, 2015, they supplied these weapons to their allies in the region, to Hezbollah, to the Ansarullah, to Syria, to other parties or non-state actors in Iraq. So Iran has established a web of allies and partners in the region that they are able to inflict direct pain against American forces in the region and their assets and interests in the region, plus their partners and allies. This is not something that the military people in Washington, D.C. could underestimate. Therefore, they know that they cannot go in direct war against Iran, and therefore they will keep engaging in this proxy type of warfare against the Iranians. They try to overthrow Assad in Syria and trigger a proxy war in Syria to keep the Iranians away from the Mediterranean and the Middle East. But it backfired. As you can see, Iranians have more influence nowadays in the region, something that the Americans didn't calculate well, unfortunately. And nowadays, the Arabic countries are trying to come back to Syria and say, let's restore our diplomatic ties and economic ties, and we may be able to convince the Americans to turn a blind eye to our businesses and our investments in Syria. And speaking of that, because I told you guys in a previous live streamings that a big Arab leader is coming to Syria, and I think 99.9% is going to be MBZ, Mohammed bin Zayed, the president of the UAE. And this is, people, of course, criticize, sometimes rightfully so, why Syria is seeking relationship again with the Arab Gulf monarchies, etc., etc. Guys, you have to take into consideration that the president of Syria, whoever he is, has the responsibility, the duty to meet the national interests of his own people, right? And the interest of his own people is to neutralize every security threat on his country, and through striking deals and reconciliation with these parties who were hostile to Syria in the past, and try to keep them on the match or keep them in the middle, right? And here we have the Chinese as a mediator, as the Russians are as a mediator. Therefore, in my opinion, the people who are scared that Syria is opening up to Saudi Arabia or the UAE should understand that in Syria you have 90% below poverty line. People are on the brink of starvation due to the American regime change war, the destruction of the infrastructure, and also nowadays the sanction regimes, right, against Syria. So Syria needs investors, and unfortunately, the Russians and the Iranians do not have the enough economic power to invest and revert the economic situation there. And the Chinese are telling Syria, first stability and security in the country, and then investment. So Syria needs people and let's say rich countries to come and invest in the country in order to heal and recover. And also remember that the UAE and Saudi Arabia have good relationship with Washington, and they are in negotiations and in discussion with Washington, D.C., the decision makers there, to try to convince them that the Americans would turn a blind eye when the Saudis and the Emiratis invest in Syria. So I find that Syria needs to have good relationship with its neighboring countries. Yes, of course, with the Arabic countries, with Turkey, with all the countries in the region, as long as it is calculated. There is always risk, of course, but it's a calculated risk, and it's something that you have to pursue for the sake of your own people. Assad was asked a few years ago, 2-3 years ago, he said, what would you do if you meet with Erdogan for a meeting? Would you shake hands with him? And he said, I would shake hands with him if we are in a conference or in a meeting, bilateral meeting together. But although I would feel disgusted, but I would do I would take this step for the sake of the Syrian people. And I agree with that approach. I'm a realist person. And in politics, there are no permanent enemies, and no, unfortunately. So you have to seek relationship for the sake of your own people. Now, if we continue this article, then we see after Jake Sullivan, the Republican House Speaker, when he was asked, his name is Mike Johnson, on the same program, he made an even more explicit threat to Iran. When asked, do you want to see strikes inside Iran? Johnson replied, it should not be off the table. This is what the speaker said in this regard. I will again screen it to you.
We need to make absolutely clear to Iran that nothing is off the table. You know, we maintain peace through strength. That was the Reagan doctrine. That's what President Trump continued, and that's what we have to do right now. We should not be appeasing Iran. That's what the Biden administration has been doing for the last 3 years. We are projecting weakness on the world stage, and frankly, Kristen, that is why our adversaries are acting so provocatively. What we need to be doing right now is turning up the heat on Iran. We need to act to decimate the Iran central bank, the assets that they've held there. We need to lean on international banks to seize the assets of Iranian proxies. We need to put big time pressure, maximum pressure on their oil exports. There's a lot that we could do to Iran to send a message instead of this appeasement strategy. We need to make absolutely.
So, guys, I think these guys are stuck in the 90s and the 2003. I don't really think that these people understand the changes that happened in the past 2 decades, and that every superpower and every empire passes through stages. And at some stages, when you are on the peak of your strength, you can project your power, you can scare people, you can, of course, bully some nations, but this cannot be permanent, right? There is no example in history that there was an empire or an hegemon who stayed forever hegemon. It's a circle, it's a cycle, right? They come and go. But unfortunately speaking, the US empire and the hegemon didn't use it for the good of its own people and for the good of the global citizens. They found a way after World War II till the collapse of the Soviet Union to centralize the powers, of course, indirectly, without showing to the people that there are centralization of powers there, in the hands of the corporations, in the hands of the bankers, in the hands of the lobbies, and the military-industrial complex. And this is the result nowadays, that the entire world can see through the through the American hypocrisy and double standards when it comes to what it preaches and what it practices, right? There is a big difference between what the United States preaches and what they do on the ground. And I think they cannot fool the people anymore. And this is a good news because, in my opinion, a multipolar system would bring so much more stability to the international system, and it will give the opportunity for the people who were subjugated by the Americans in the past or resisting not to be subjugated by the US empire to have a periphery of maneuvering and pursuing and seeking their own national interests with alternative powers. This is just my opinion. So after we heard Jake Sullivan and Mike Johnson and what they said about Iran, the back-to-back appearances by officials of both the Democratic-controlled White House and the Republican-led House of Representatives were meant to convey the unanimity within the U.S. political establishment for the escalation of the war in the Middle East. The Biden administration is proceeding with staggering recklessness, inflaming a regional war that threatens to draw in the entire world. A full-scale U.S. war with Iran would have catastrophic human, political, and economic consequences, eclipsing even the bloodbath caused by the 2003 invasion of Iraq. The latest U.S. offensive in the Middle East is a crucial element of an unfolding global war centrally targeting Russia and China. The subjugation of Iran, lying at the heart of Eurasia, is a critical component of the United States' drive for global military domination. In its effort to militarily encircle and economically strangle China, Washington is seeking to drive a wedge between Beijing and Iran, which is a major oil supplier to China. A major factor in instigating the escalation against Iran is the massive setback suffered by the United States and European imperialist powers in Ukraine. Even while U.S. imperialism doubles down on its fight against Russia to the last Ukrainian, it has opened up another front in the global war. In his appearance on Sunday, Sullivan was keen to point out that the U.S. strikes against Yemen and conflict with Iran has absolutely nothing to do with Israel. This is a lie. The Biden administration has given Israel a green light to devastate Gaza in order to secure Israeli assistance to wage war in Syria, Yemen, Iraq, and ultimately Iran. Israel's final solution of the Palestinian question through the massacre and expulsion of the population of Gaza is a critical component of the U.S. drive to reorganize the Middle East under its domination. I totally agree with him when it comes especially to, I will show you the map, Russia and China, map Eurasia. I will show you this map, guys, just for us to understand why Iran is very important for the United States. Of course, for the sake of Iran is being a regional power, but also when we see the wider geopolitical landscape and we see this map, for example, Iran, Russia, and China, they represent the three pillars of the Eurasian region. And whoever controls over Eurasia controls the world, according to many geopolitical theorists. Therefore, the Americans, first of all, I will just little bit zoom it more. Yeah. So I will explain, guys. China is extending its power and its trade routes from China, Xinjiang, to many places, to many regions, and they will pass through Iran, right? And they will come to, of course, Iraq, Syria, and go to the Mediterranean, for example, or from the northern route. In any ways, how the American planners see this is a huge threat for the global trade warfare or battle with China. Therefore, they see that if they destabilize Iran, then the trade routes of China to Iran and then to the rest of the Middle East will be also destabilized. And this is also one of the reasons, guys, if you see where Syria is located, the American occupation forces are on the eastern side of Syria, right? Why are they occupying the eastern side of Syria? Because one of the reasons I mentioned multiple reasons, but while we're speaking about China, because China, if they extend their trade routes through the Silk Road Initiative, if they pass through Iran, Iraq, and Syria freely, they will go to the Mediterranean and from the Mediterranean to Europe. And they want to have a have a military presence there to block the access of China freely to the international markets. Therefore, before they withdraw from Syria, they want to make sure that the eastern side of Syria is separated and the Kurdish militias have their piece of cake to call for a separation and have their own state, which is a pro-United States, pro-American, pro-Israel, pro-Zionists, in order to block the free access of Russia through Syria to the global market. So we have to see these things from also geopolitical perspective, but also from the trade perspective. But since we were speaking about the Speaker of the House and in the United States, this is a little bit, of course, ironic, funny, and not unsurprising at all. While he is unconditionally supporting now Israel and, of course, calling for tougher actions against Iran, the Speaker just announced that next week the House will vote on a clean bill to send Israel $14.3 billion from the taxpayer money of the Americans. Israel has a lower debt to GDP ratio than the United States. This spending package has no offsets, so it will increase our debt by $14.3 billion plus interest. No, says. This is Thomas Massie. He is a representative. I don't know if he is a Democrat or a Republican, but I was reading this article today, and look how things are all correlated, guys. This is coming from The Intercept. After House Speaker Mike Johnson pushed through Israel and aid package, AIPAC cash came flowing in. The guy is making lots of money, guys. Seriously, this is no joke. So AIPAC donated around $95,000 to Republican Mike Johnson in November, according to The Intercept's analysis of Federal Election Commission records. The pro-Israel lobbying group was Johnson's top donor in 2023, pouring money into his campaign coffers just after he led the passage of a $14 billion aid package to Israel. Oh my God. United States is lost, man. It's lost. AIPAC's Political Action Committee donated a total of $104,000 to Johnson last year, with the majority of payments coming since the start of the Gaza war and after Johnson was elected House Speaker in late October. So since the October 7 and since the election or the selection of Johnson as the House Speaker, he received $104,000 in 4 months, so around $25,000, $30,000 dollar per month from AIPAC, and he is going to propose now next week, so for the Americans, for the House to vote for $14 billion aid to Israel. AIPAC is a major power broker on Capitol Hill, where it gives money to lawmakers from both major political parties in order to preserve or enhance pro-Israeli policies. In recent years, the group has become a more partisan actor, training its sights on democratic critics of Israel. It has recruited primary challengers to progressive members of Congress and launched a super PAC, the United Democracy Project, through which it has spent millions of dollars to help defeat Democratic candidates who express concern or support for the people of Palestine in any way. Stephen Walt, the co-author of the Israel Lobby and U.S. Foreign Policy, told The Intercept that U.S. policy toward the Middle East is the foreign policy issue on which lobbyist groups have the most influence. Quote, in terms of foreign policy, this is probably the one issue where money in politics has had the greatest negative effect, said Walt, a professor of international relations at the Harvard Kennedy School. So guys, the issue with the AIPAC is not that they're only funding or donating money to the politicians, to the senators, to the congressmen, to the congresswomen, probably to even more senior officials, probably in the CIA, probably in the Pentagon, those who are in charge of the U.S. Foreign policy, right? Or the major strategic headlines of the U.S. foreign policy. They're not only donating money to them, but they're also trying to sabotage the electoral campaign of candidates who do not support Israel unconditionally or express any type of solidarity with the Palestinian people. So if you're an American official, or you want to become in a position of power, or want to become a congressman or senator or governor or anything in the United States, if AIPAC has this much of power and strength over the political life in the United States, you really don't want to piss them off, right? So accordingly, you could judge, and you could say that this money that is, this is a black money, and this is a corrupted money, and this is a type of money that can corrupt lots of politicians, and they could say something during the electoral times and they do something else after they got to position of power. Because lots of people underestimate the willingness of people in a position of power to stay in power, right? And the willingness of people when they get used to the spoiled lifestyle to get back to their normal jobs. And there's so much money there, right? And especially if you have a family and your family is now used to a certain lifestyle, you don't want to, as a man, to downgrade the lifestyle of your family. There are so many people. I know politicians who say things in media regarding Israel, for example, that they don't believe in. I personally know. And because they are scared by the impact and the repercussions of saying something that the Israeli lobby would disagree with or hate, and their political career would be over accordingly. Guys, before moving to the next stage of this live streaming, we are over 300 people watching. I appreciate you all. And I would really appreciate it more if you just hit the like button while you're watching this live streaming, because it attracts more people to join the live streaming. And when it's over, more people can see on their live streaming. Thank you so much, guys. And since we're speaking about also people like Johnson, who's calling for flaring the fires in the Middle East, and the psychopaths in Washington, D.C., this psychopathy is not exclusive to the politicians, but you have in parallel a media establishment in the United States. Of course, not all of them, but the influential ones, those who are like, I consider them soldiers in fighting shoulder to shoulder with the American establishment in the past years. One of which is, of course, Thomas Friedman. And do you know what Thomas Friedman published the other day, guys? This is mind-blowing. Of course, I'm not going to show you from the website because it's paid, and I'm not going to pay a penny for them to to read the articles. So I made slides on Canva. Thomas Friedman thought it's a good idea to write an article and compare the Middle East to a jungle, and try to compare each country and each actor in the region, state or non-state actors, to some animals. And he says, understanding the Middle East through the animal kingdom. Guys, the thing is, like, somebody read this article in the editorial, let's say, board, and he thought it's a good idea to publish it, right? So what does the article says? This is the summary. The United States is like an old lion. So the United States is an old lion, guys. We are still the king of the Middle East jungle. More powerful than any single actor, but we have so many scars from so many fights that we just can't just show up, roar loudly, and expect that everyone will do what we want or scamper away. So guys, the United States is the lion, but it's a tired lion because they were fighting a lot in the past, and they cannot just come and tell every actor to do what they want according to him. Iran is to geopolitics what a recently discovered species of parasitoid wasp is to nature. So Iran is a parasitoid wasp, right? Iran is a wasp. I'm just writing here. Iran is a wasp. US is the lion, guys. So the wasp injects its eggs into live caterpillars, and the baby wasp larvae slowly eat the caterpillar from the inside out, bursting out once they have eaten their fill. What the fuck is this, guys? What the fuck is this? So we have wasps now, and we have lions. Is there a better description of Lebanon, Yemen, Syria, and Iraq today? They are the caterpillars. So the countries, Lebanon, Yemen, Syria, and Iraq are the caterpillars, and the wasps are multiplying inside the caterpillar, and they're going to kill the caterpillar at the end. So the IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, is the wasp, okay? The Houthis, those non-state actors, Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, and Kataib Hezbollah are the eggs that hatch inside the host, Lebanon, Yemen, Syria, and Iraq, and eat it from inside. So we have the non-state actors. Those are, guys, the eggs that are multiplying inside the caterpillars, and they will kill the caterpillar at the end of the day, right? So what's next? The fifth. He says, we have no counter strategy that safely and efficiently kills the wasp without setting fire to the whole jungle. So this tired lion wants to kill the wasp that is multiplying inside the caterpillar, and they are spawning eggs inside the caterpillar. There is no way for the US to kill the wasp, Iran, without setting fire to the whole jungle, to the Middle East. So Middle East is jungle, guys. Netanyahu, on the other hand, who is Netanyahu? Netanyahu is like the Sifaka lemur that uses bipedal sideways hopping as a primary means of walking. That's Bibi, always shifting side to side to stay in power and avoiding going decisively backward or forward. This week, he may have two. So this is the article, guys. Seriously, he thought this is a brilliant article and he published it. And somebody in the editorial board read it and he said, publish it. And no shame at all, you know. So the United States is the lion, guys, who is the noble animal in the jungle. Iran is the wasp, that is spawning eggs through its non-state actors, Hezbollah, the Ansarullah, Kataib, something in also Iraq, the Houthis, and inside the caterpillars in order to kill these caterpillars. And Netanyahu is, I forgot the type of animal he was, but it's a cute animal, you know. So yeah, man, he's comparing the region to a jungle. And the best commentary that I read today about this case came from Arnaud Bertrand. This is a brilliant commentary that he wrote about it. He said, easily one of the most unhinged Thomas Friedman New York Times column. He decided to understand the Middle East through the animal kingdom. Always a great idea to compare peoples to animals in a context of genocide and dehumanization. And surprise, surprise, the more noble animals are the US and Netanyahu, respectively a lion and a lemur, while all the locals are insects and parasites. So, for instance, Iran, one of the world's oldest civilizations, is a parasitoid wasp that injects its eggs into live caterpillars. The caterpillars being Lebanon, Yemen, Syria, and Iraq, and the wasp's eggs, the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, and Kataib Hezbollah. Hamas, by the way, on top of being a wasp egg, is also apparently a trapdoor spider. Go figure. And apparently, the old lion, that is the United States, has no counter strategy that safely and efficiently kills the wasp without setting fire to the whole jungle. In this regard, burn the Middle East down. It doesn't even make sense, by the way. Why would a lion who lives in the savannah be bothered by a jungle wasp? Is it because his friend, the lemur, who eats caterpillars, is bothered by the eggs? So anyone, there you have it. So anyhow, there you have it. Geopolitics explained to Americans by the New York Times premier columnist. We are the king of the animals. We are burdened by the insects and parasites in the jungle, and we might just have to burn the whole thing down. What do you think, guys, about this article? Sorry that I'm laughing while I'm reading it because I haven't read anything as ridiculous as this previously. Black Tie, thank you, brother, for your generous support. I truly appreciate it. But because I show you the crazy people, right? But I want to show you also the people who are sane, right? So we can create some balance. And this is an article published in the Responsible Statecraft by Joshua Landes. And by the way, I contacted him to come to my show on Saturday when the US bombed Syria and Iraq, and he would have loved to come, but unfortunately he had to go to a family affair, so he couldn't come. But I will invite him again in the near future when there is something important about this case. He says, the deaths of 3 Americans in Jordan due to an attack by the Islamic resistance in Iraq was an avoidable tragedy. It should prompt the United States to speed up its exit from Syria and Iraq, something policymakers have been contemplating for some time. Hawks in Washington insist that by striking Iran directly and hard, the US can bring security to its troops. The danger will subside because Iran understands force. But this analysis misunderstands the region and minimizes the dangers arrayed against US troops. Iran has been committed to pushing US troops out of Iraq and Syria, something its leaders articulated clearly following an earlier use of US force, the assassination of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps General Soleimani in 2020. Iran will not back down if the US assassinates more of its leaders or strikes infrastructure in Iran for the simple reason that it has the upper hand in the region. But Iran is far from being the only government that wants US troops out. Turkey, Iraq, and Syria are equally determined to drive the US from its bases. Every single government in the region is demanding that US troops leave. The Syrian government is also determined to drive Americans from its soil. It accuses Washington of illegally occupying 30% of its territory and stealing its oil to subsidize the quasi-independent territory the US has established in northeast Syria. As a consequence, the majority of Syrians languish in poverty and must survive with only a few hours of electricity per day. While the economy remains paralyzed by US sanctions, they want the US out. The Iraqi government is also demanding that US troops leave. Striking Iran will not solve America's problems in the region. Biden's support for Israel's war against the Palestinians has inflamed anti-American and anti-Western feelings across the entire Arab world. It has breathed new life into the resistance front. Lastly, the forces allied with Iran that stretch from Lebanon to Iraq are not foreign to the region. They cannot be rolled back by US power and retaliatory strikes. The notion that several thousand American soldiers can be kept safe while hunkered down in desert bases sprinkled across the great expanse of this region is a mirage. No one wants them there, not the governments and not the people. All are sharpening their knives and devising new ways to weaken them and force them to leave. It is pointless for Washington to keep them there for a mission that has long since passed its expiration date, or to escalate a war it cannot win. So there are multiple things in this article, one of which that something that I share, and I told you multiple times on Syriana Analysis, I truly believe the Americans do not have a future in the region. They cannot stay in Iraq and Syria any longer. I mean, they can stay maybe a year or 2 or 3, but there is no long-term strategy for them to stay there. And the actors in the region, whether they are state or non-state actors, are becoming more emboldened, and they're getting more weapons, and they're getting better trained, and they're getting ready to fight against the Americans and kick them out. So what's the strategy of the Americans there? Do they want to keep a few hundred soldiers in Syria and keep occupying the oil fields? Today, an attack by drone attack against the oil fields in the eastern shore of the Euphrates, where the American forces are located, killed multiple proxy forces of the Americans there. Those are the Kurdish militias. And tomorrow after tomorrow, there might be another attack that could kill more US soldiers, right? So if you're an American father, American brother, American patriot, or just an American, and you have a son, a brother in Syria, ask them, what are they doing there? Why are they stationed there? Do they really believe that they're fighting terrorism? Of course not. They know, because they're on the ground there, right? So, unfortunately speaking, I'm just saying this, like, they're used as a cannon fodder there by the American establishment for the sake of keeping Syria poor, and probably also for Israel. This is the unfortunate truth. But since we spoke about the Qasem Soleimani's case and how the Iranians vote to kick the Americans out, and this is the part that Donald Trump jumped in now, and he made a big statement in this regard, especially after the attack against the U.S. forces in the region, which killed 3 troops on the borders between Syria and Jordan. And this is what he had to say in this regard. And this is the title of today's video. And let's see if he is lying or telling the truth.
Mr. President, I want to get back to Iran. We lost 3 service members last week. May they rest in peace. In Jordan, an enemy drone from Iranian-backed proxies launched that deadly drone strike, killed our heroes. What should be the proper response?
Before you go too far, would have never happened with me. I had Iran in check. Do you know, we hit them very hard for something that they did, and they had to hit back. They feel they have to do that, and I understand that. Do you know, they called me to tell me we're going to hit a certain location, but we're not going to hit it. It's going to be outside of the perimeters.
Who called you?
Iran called me, called for me. And they let us know, and we had 16 missiles went off. I believe it was 16. 6 or 7 failed in the air.
When was this?
This was prior to the attack on a fort that we had where they hit back. Do you remember when they sent 18 missiles or 16 missiles? 5 failed. They let us know, don't move. We're going to have to hit you back. Psychologically, we have to do that because we hit them on something. You remember, they sent 16 or 18 missiles, and we knew they weren't going to hit inside the fort. And the media was going, and now I reveal it, the media was going wild because they say it's strange. They're very accurate missiles. How come they all missed? Nobody was killed, if you remember.
Yes,
with all of those missiles, nobody was killed. Now, they had to do it because they have people and they have to show strength. So they aimed the missiles, but they said, please don't attack us. We're not going to hit you. That was respect. We had respect. When we took out Soleimani, you know, Israel was supposed to do it with us. 2 days before the takeout, they said, we can't do it. We can't do it. I said, what? We can't do it. Then I had a certain general who's great. I said, so General, do we do it ourselves? He said, we can, sir. It's up to you. I said, we'll do it. But Israel was a part of it. You know, Bibi was a big part of it. And we had everything planned, everything, because what he has done is terrible. What he did to us was terrible. Killed so many of our soldiers, killed so many people. He's the father of the roadside bomb. You know that, right? And Soleimani, we can't, it was just incredible. And al-Baghdadi, I wiped him out too. Yeah. We took out al-Baghdadi, the founder of ISIS, that nobody could find except me, and Soleimani, father of the roadside bomb. Now, and beyond that, killed many people. He was going to attack 5 of our military bases, and we took him out. And we took him out without Israel, because Israel, 2 days before the attack, they said, we cannot participate.
What comes to your mind, guys, when you watch this by Donald Trump? First of all, there is a factual misinformation there. And that is Qasem Soleimani was the guy behind the IEDs or the side road bombs. Qasem Soleimani was in charge of emboldening, empowering the non-state actors in the region through the IRGC, like Hezbollah, like Hamas. In Syria, the Syrian army. And he played an instrumental role. Whether you agree with him or not, this is a completely different case, guys. But history will tell that Qasem Soleimani participated in foiling the US regime change war in Syria. And he participated, yes, he killed so many of our people, but our people is the people of ISIS, people of Nusra, people of Al-Qaeda, people of Jaish al-Islam, people of Ahrar al-Sham, people of the so-called Free Syrian Army. Yes, his guys and his men who were under his supervision, training, etc., they killed so many of these militants, that's true. But those were the American proxies in Syria, right? So, yeah, Qasem Soleimani participated in foiling a big project, one of the costliest covert operation in the history of the CIA, called Timber Sycamore. So that's why I think they killed him, because he helped the people in Iraq and Syria to fight against these terrorist groups, funded, supported by the United States and other NATO countries, Turkey, Qatar, sometimes Saudi Arabia. Yeah, that's the truth. But I was reading, like when I watched this video, like the Trump claims that all of Iran's missiles missed the base, right? And this is false. I mean, I will show you now the evidence for that. At least 11 of the Iranian missiles hit Assad base of the Americans. And there are satellite images confirming this fact, right? And 100 American troops were diagnosed with traumatic brain injuries, and one of them had a severe injury in his eyes. Trump, in my opinion, here he placed himself at the center, of course, of action. He does that lots of times. Like he's the superhero, you know, he's the superhero president whom opponents respect or cover before. You know, this tough persona that he tries to play. But another source is Iran's former National Security Council Secretary Ali Shamkhani. He said Iran reaching out to the US before the missile attack on Ain al-Assad is a complete lie. Better for Trump to answer this question instead of making electoral lies. What's the reason of his semi-hidden life and special protection for him, Pompeo, Bolton, and the military involved in the martyrdom of martyr Qasem Soleimani, according to him? But just to prove you that Trump is lying in this regard, this is the satellite images of that prove that he is lying. This is Iran targets U.S. forces, and those were the 3 locations that were hit. 15 missiles landed at Ain al-Assad airbase. 2 missiles landed in the city of Hit, but didn't go off, and 5 missiles targeted Erbil coalition headquarters. So around 20 missiles landed in Iraq. And this is the, I will just take it a little bit, let's zoom in. So this is the Ain al-Assad airbase, and those are the damaged facilities, and I will show you some of the pictures. Between December 25th and the January 8th, you can see that the damage has been done to some of the barracks here in the 2 pictures that you can see in Ain al-Assad airbase. And also you will see here, this building is gone. Another photo, 2 of these barracks and the buildings are gone. And here, as you can see, in the F here, partly this building is destroyed. And also here in G, you can see this one is also destroyed. So Donald Trump is bluffing in this regard, in my opinion. He didn't receive any confirmation or any message from the Iranians, and to tell him that they're not going to hit any military installations or bases belonging to the Americans. And I believe that the Iranians are serious in kicking out the American forces from the region. And this is not only the Iranians, but also the people of the region. And this is something important that Professor Joshua Landes mentioned. He said, those are the people of the region. They're not going anywhere. Like, you can bomb them, you can turn their countries into ashes, but these people are not going to live anywhere. The people who are alien to the region is the American occupation forces. So if you can bomb Iraqis, you can bomb Yemenis, you can bomb Syrians, you can probably bomb the Iranians, but the Iranians aren't going to leave their country, Iraqis aren't going to leave their country, and the Syrians aren't going to leave their country, right? So if you see it from this perspective, you realize that all these attempts by the Americans to slow down their to slow down the process of the Americanization of the region is just desperate attempts. And it reminds me of a dinosaur that is going to go extinct, in the near future, and they're just flaring up the region before they leave, so everybody can burn with them. And as Friedman said, there is no way to kill the wasp without this, what he said, destroying the region or burning the region. So, I truly don't know what to say more than this. This was, I think, the end of this live streaming, guys. I truly appreciate every single one of you for tuning in and watching this channel, liking the videos, sharing it with your friends, and becoming patron. If you can support my work, the link is scrolling on the screen, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. That gives me the financial support to stay independent so that I don't get money from the Russians and the Russian Church, Orthodox Church. So, guys, I will see you tomorrow, Tuesday, 5 p.m. Central European times. Until then, stay safe. Peace be upon you and peace be upon your families. Salam.